Thank you, Dragos. Hope you had a nice lunch break, everyone, and that you're feeling refreshed and ready for what I know it will be an interactive type of presentation where we will be asked to do some tasks. So looking forward to that. It is really my pleasure to welcome Marta Kuljon and Beatrice Pacioni from the Director General for Justice and Consumers at the European Commission and the Publications Office of the European Union, respectively. And they will talk about a case study on how to write documents for children. The title of their presentation is Writing Documents for Children with Children, Accessibility in Practice. And I know it will be a very interesting but also intriguing type of presentation. So Beatrice and Marta, thank you again, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hello and good afternoon to everyone from Brussels. I have to apologize. I'm having some technical difficulties and I'm not able to share my presentation. But I hope that Bea will be able to do it on my behalf.
I will do it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Can you
thanks
see?
So much. Yes, it's on. Great. Thank you so much. So I would like to start with telling you how it happened that we started writing for children with children. So we have to go back to 2019 when the new commission started, and the president of the commission, Ursula von der Leyen, spoke to vice president of the commission, Dubravka Šuica. And because children are almost 20% of EU citizens or EU population and almost 30% of the worldwide population, they decided that we need something more to do to better protect and promote the rights of the child. And that's basically how it happens that then they contacted the team of 3 women, and I'm one of them. I'm based in the Rights of the Child team that works in the Justice and Consumers of the European Commission, in the unit that deals with fundamental rights. And as children's rights are fundamental rights, that's why we're there. And that's the structure that allowed us to work on the EU strategy on the rights of the child. Before I move on to telling you how we did it and what were the main features of our work, I wanted to ask you a first question. Have you ever read any legal or policy document that was written in a child-friendly language? And that's the next slide, Bea. Thank you. And if yes, what was that? And if you could put it in the slide, in the chat, I'm sorry, we will get back to this. Unfortunately, I can't see the chat neither, so I will have to ask Bea or the organizers to monitor it a little bit and see what we have there.
I have to ask Alina, because as I'm presenting, I will see if I can see the chat. Yes, I can see it very well. Okay, go ahead.
I can see it as well. I think I have some pop-ups coming in.
Okay.
Great. Okay. So maybe just to give you a frame of, yeah, there's various child-friendly versions. Great. So we have some people who are familiar with such documents. We are, of course, not the first ones. There are some judgments written in child-friendly languages, not that many yet, but there are some. There are United Nations documents that were kind of translated into child-friendly languages, and Council of Europe documents as well. If we move to the next slide. So why did we start writing for children with children? It's basically because there is a a legal obligation. We have the Article 24 of the Charter of the Fundamental Rights of the EU and Article 12 of the United Nations Convention of the Rights of the Child. And they both say that children have a right to express their views, and that we have obligation to take their views into account. That was the frame that brought us to thinking that we can't really write the strategy on the rights of the child without talking to children first. And the next slide, please. And that's how we worked on the strategy with children. We conducted consultations with children, with child rights organizations who helped us in reaching them in different member states in different locations. And because it was middle of the COVID pandemic, most of the replies that we received were coming online through online questionnaires, but we still reached quite an impressive number of 10,000 replies. And based on that, we then worked on the strategy. We took input of children into account. And as a consequence of working with children ahead of the strategy, we thought that we needed to also prepare a version of the strategy, of the document that they can access, that they can get familiar with, that they can see what they said was taken on board, and how does it translate into actions as well. So we thought that we needed to write or create yet another document with having really the reader in mind. And we wanted to have this opportunity for children to contribute to that as well, to make their point. And we didn't want to create something before we asked them about their opinion on that. And we didn't want to kind of create something on their behalf. And I can really tell you that if we wouldn't work with children on the child-friendly version of the strategy, we would end up with a different document, probably childish and not child-friendly, and probably one version and not three. If we can move on. And here is another question for you. What do you think children proposed as the title, as in a child-friendly language, for the EU strategy on the rights of the child? And here we can't move on with the slides because we will reveal the answer. So we have to give it some seconds for the audience to come up with another title for the EU strategy on the rights of the child.
No idea.
Okay, for the sake of time, European priorities regarding children's. Okay. Let's maybe move on. My rights, my way, very good. Europe for you, great. Kids' rights, simple as well. In fact, what children proposed was to replace the word strategy for plan, because they thought that strategy was really not clear for them. And if you so that was their idea, and that's how we named all the three versions of the strategy, the European Union's plan for children's rights. And the layout of the document, and Bea will be talking about this a bit more in details, is also very simple. It's blue and white with the European logo, with flags. We need to write down the proposals that you put in the chat for our coming documents. It's very good. Thank you so much. And the design was also coming from children. Why do we have now three versions? It's because the first one, the longer one, is our basis. Then children themselves said that they thought we needed also a shorter version for younger children. And then came the third version, which is an easy read version for those who have difficulties with reading or understanding really long paragraphs. So there are many icons, and Bea will show this version later on. We didn't do it alone. Again, we reached out, and the next slide, please. We reached out to experts. We asked Professor Laura Lundi and her team to help us with the work on the child-friendly version of the strategy. And she contacted two schools where two groups of children were working on the next version, the child-friendly version of the strategy. So the first basic version was done in English with children coming from two schools in Ireland. The age brackets was more or less from 10 to 16. Next slide. The way to do it was quite straightforward. So first, the team of Laura Lundi prepared a shorter version of the strategy. They checked it with us. Then they explained the process to children. They let them know the first kind of summary of the strategy that was prepared. Then there was a brainstorming sessions, listening to children, listening to what they understood, what they thought was good, what they thought wasn't clear, what they wanted in addition to what was prepared. The second version was ready, and then there was another round of consultations, and at the very end, once everyone agreed on the final version, we had also a follow-up session when we explained to children also which parts were a bit maybe changed from their proposal, because we needed to stick more to the original meaning of the strategy. And this is one disclaimer that I wanted to put here, that the child-friendly version of the document, it's not going to be 100% kind of accurate. It's not going to have the same level of details as the original document. It's going to be the summary that aims to really make children curious and make them aware of the basic facts about the document, and then they can reach out and ask for more explanation. If we can move to the next slide. Here we come to the translation, because of course this version, the three versions were in English, as I said at the very beginning, but we thought that no, it's not going to be accessible and it's not going to be inclusive, it's going to be only in English. So we asked Eurochild to help us with that. We had our colleagues in the European Commission to translate the child-friendly English versions into EU languages. This linguistic versions went then to children who work on them in their national languages, and they validated the various linguistic versions, and they came back to us with some comments, with some feedback, with questions. And depending on the language, there were some comments, because of course something that was translated even from the child-friendly version was not necessarily child-friendly in a different national language. So that was an important lesson for us to learn as well. If we can move on to the next one. So what makes a document child-friendly? We have to start with the title. As I started today in the presentation, sometimes we have to change it very much. Sometimes just a small tweak is enough. We use child-friendly images. There needs to be a child-friendly tone, but not childish. So we don't want to make it, it doesn't necessarily need to be cartoon to be a child-friendly. But there needs to be key information that should be in bullet points. And for example, what came out from the discussions with children, some of the definitions, they had to be explained in the child-friendly version, that we don't have them explained in the original document of the strategy. And of course, it can't be very long, because then it's really putting off. Next one. Based on our experience with working with children and working on the child-friendly versions of the strategy, we created, together with children and with Professor Lundi, a guide on how to draft child-friendly documents. This guide has not only like steps that I presented to you just now, but it also has a glossary of jargon and terms used most often in our documents that were not understood by children, or the children thought that in the future may pose some questions or may need to be explained. So there is a table with the word explanation in child, like equivalent in child-friendly language, and whenever possible, we also added alt text and an image. And so to sum up, there are 4 A's that contribute to the child-friendly version of the document. The document is age appropriate, but the childish. It's accurate, so it's checked with the author against the content. It's accessible, and here will come Bea with her presentation. And it's appealing. It doesn't need to be very colorful. It doesn't need to be sparkly. It needs to be something that children will want to have a look at. The next one. After the whole exercise, we spoke with children and we spoke with teachers who participated in the exercise. And I wanted just to share 2 quotes from those conversations, because they kind of encourages us to continue our work on that. And one of children told us that children have the most experience in understanding how it feels to be a child in today's world and all the challenges that this presents. So that's why we want to continue consulting children and asking them about policy and legal initiatives that are going to come up in the Commission. And the teacher who was involved in that process told us that working on such projects empowers children to recognize and engage with not only their rights, but wider rights issues in society. And this can be only a benefit for societies in general. So now that we know in a very short presentation what does it mean to make a document child-friendly, I wanted to ask you for yet another exercise. And this is, we started exercise with yet another quote. It came from a child who participated in our meetings. And she said that if something cannot be explained to a 6-year-old, it means that it's not understood. And I took an example of a doctoral thesis from the web page from the Vienna University. And the title is Facilitating Multilingual Crisis Communication. And maybe let's stay with this part. If you would like to share with us your ideas for this title, as it could be explained to a 6-year-old. I would be very curious to see what you come up with, because you came up with really nice and good ideas for the title of the strategy already. So I'm sure that there is a lot of ideas in the room and in the virtual room. And this is the end of my presentation. The last slide just gives you some links to the documents. I'm really sorry that I wasn't able to show you the documents. Bear will show you some part of the documents, and I invite you to visit them online. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marta.
I will open my presentation. I want just start to answer by a question. Angela is asking if you have considered using dyslexic-friendly fonts. In fact, there are a lot of dyslexic-friendly fonts, but no one is, let's say, amended from a scientific point of view. So there are rules to be respected to help dyslexic people, but unfortunately, it's accessibility in this domain is starting, let's say. So I will start now my presentation. I'm Beatrice Pacioni. I'm graphic designer and accessibility specialist here in the publications office, based in Luxembourg. I have blue background with the logo of the publications office. And I'm a white woman and in the 50s. I don't want to tell you exactly how much. I wear round glasses because of presbyopia. So this is also an accessibility problem that sometimes we have. I have brown and gray hairs. And from my little accent, you can understand that I'm Italian, and then I have also a little cold. This will be a small presentation about publishing, accessible publishing. So I suppose that as you are here, you are all familiar with accessibility, or at least that you are curious about it. Let's start by resume briefly what an accessible publication means. It means that everybody should be able to use the publication regardless to their abilities. And this is also the reason why it is so important. We have always to keep in mind that we work for our audience, and our audience could include any sort of people with disabilities. So let's finish by describing our slide. We have an image of a computer with different icons about disabilities. Now, let's see what needs to be done to help our audience to use our publications. So the first thing is that we have to structure our content. A well-structured text will guide our audience smoothly through the publication and makes it more understandable, but not only. There are also other rules. Like, for example, titles should always be meaningful. And in the case of children, these titles should be short because they are easier to be read by a child and to understood by a child, and also to be remembered because you arrive at the end of the chapter and you don't remember your title. As assistive technology recognizes paragraph styles, okay, target paragraph styles, but this is really technique, so I don't want to go deep in it. All text should be formatted by applying styles in an homogeneous and coherent way, and this is really important. Here you can see on this slide, I have something called H2. This means that it is in heading 2, and it will be the same throughout our publication. And I really invite people working with text to not create headings by simply changing manually the font or the size or the color, because this is a risk of error. And as assistive technology recognizes the languages, we have also to set up the language in our paragraph style. And you know that, for example, for English, there is quite a wide choice, and also for German. So we have really to pay attention what it is our audience and what it is the language supposed to be in our publication. And then when we work for children, but also for adults, we should also try to limit the heading levels. Think that Acrobat foresees 6 heading levels, but in my opinion, they are already a lot. Better to stay between, let's say, 3 and 4, because today I'm kind. Usually I say 2. And on my slide, we have a small recap of what I have just described. And we have a page of the European Union Plan for Children's Rights that Marta just presented. And as I said, here you can see the heading structure that it is behind the text. Now, something that it is fundamental in accessibility is it is the reading order, because the reading order determines how the screen reader, how assistive technology will go through the document, will guide the reader through the document. if the reading order is not set correctly or it is asked to be set automatically, maybe it is incorrect and the reader will be confused and lost in our page. So again, text should appear in the correct reading order, but for children, because now we speak about this publication, it must be really logical and intuitive, not really too difficult to understand. And to describe the slide, here we have what I have just described in words, and again, one page of the children's right plan, where you can see the reading order, and these are these small numbers that are set. In my case, I work with InDesign, but it is also visible in PowerPoint and in Word. And now, a little bit, Marta already introduced it. We have alt text or alternative text. And what it is, an alternative text is a small written description of an image, a link or a table. I mean, everything can have an alt text, in fact, which makes sense when the image, the link or the table cannot be viewed for any reason. So please remember that describing an image, writing an alt text is an editorial work. So it's not me, graphic designer with basic English, that will be able to write an alt text. The author of a publication knows the message he wants to give. So it's up to the author to describe an image, to write the alt text. And here on my slide, we have again a page from the Children's Right Plan. And this menu, it comes from InDesign. And here it is where I manage all what it is alt text or artifact, because all the images that are only decorative, we have to tag them as artifact, because so that the assistive technology will not read them. And now, as Marta announced, we have an exercise, and as we have not that much time, I have put a chronometer and I will stress you. Here on the left column, we have the recap of what I just said about alt text. And on the right side, we have a really nice picture of Marilyn Monroe in black and white. And what do you have to do? You should write an alt text for this image. So please write it in the chat. I can read the chat, so I can read it for you, or you can also read it your own. And then we will see the solutions. And now let's see who writes faster than the others. Not me. Black and white photograph of Marilyn Monroe who stands behind the camera. Yeah. You can, it's really up to you, up the message you want to give. I don't know if somebody else dares write an alt text for me. Black and white image of a blonde woman staying next. We wrote, you know, we wrote more or less the same things, because I have some solutions that I will show you. So I'm not really original. A young woman is standing in front of an old stone building with a camera on a tripod. In a black and white picture, a woman with blonde hair and long dress behind a camera or a tripod. A woman stands in front of a building. Okay. Yeah, her name should be in a caption. Or yeah. Okay, I will show you what I'm proposing. It is more or less that what you have all written. A beautiful blonde woman looking at the camera, Marilyn posing with Milton Green's twin lens Rolleiflex camera, Marilyn Monroe wearing a long white skirt, we had this also, and Marilyn Monroe photographed by Milton Greens in 1954. So why we did this exercise? now you notice that there is not a correct answer. The answer is the message you want to give. What it is important to know that there are some screen readers that reads maximum 250 characters. There is a way to go above this, but this is just to tell you that alt text should be kept short, and also that should include all relevant information. And you see it, you wrote it. The information is that it is Marilyn Monroe, that it is in black and white, that she's standing in front of a camera. You had all this answer. But again, we don't know. As a graphic designer, I don't know the author message. So it is really up to the author to write it. What it is also important, and we had in our publication a few links, it is that a link should be meaningful. And here we have 4 examples, 2 that are wrong and 2 that are correct. Links such as click here or more don't provide any information to the screen reader, and they are meaningless if they are out of the context. But a link that gives an idea where we are going, such learn more about accessibility, will help the reader to understand if he or she wants to visit the link. So it is really important to have a meaningful link. So having a URL is not completely wrong, but you have to know that assistive technology will read https://op. We read everything. So if the link is short and meaningful, you can also use it. I mean, it's allowed. But if it is that long, avoid it. And now colors. Colors should have a good contrast. And what does we mean with color should have a good contrast? This is the difference of brightness between the foreground and the background color. The rules that we follow are the rules of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And this because this is a web PDF. An accessible PDF is always based on web rules. Don't convey a message with the use of only colors, because you may exclude part of the audience from understanding the message. So on this slide, I have again a page of the children right publication, plus a color contrast analyzer that you can find for free on the web. And now we have a new exercise. Here, as you can see, we have a chart. Okay, I know it's not nice and it's not fancy, but this is just for the exercise. Okay, we speak about color and color contrast. So of all evidence, the problem is about the colors. I can tell you that I have checked the color with the color contrast checker tool that we have just seen. And it came out that there are no issues between the foreground color, so the color of the 3 slices, and the background, which is white, or between the 3 slices color and the border. But if I'm speaking about this, and this is an exercise that you have to do, so please write. We have already the answer. Very well. Roxana already said it. Voila, this is the answer. This is like a person with deuteranopia. I'm sorry if I pronounce it wrongly. I will never be able to pronounce it. It is like a person with deuteranopia sees this chart. Think that this is the most common color blindness, and 4.5% of the population has this problem. So in this case, you can still recognize the different slices. But can you say which caption goes with which slice? I would say no. So there are solutions, of course. I have chosen to have a really simple chart so that I had an easy life to prepare it. But this is also, again, to tell you that if you decide to have a chart, think about it, that if it is too complicated, perhaps we will have trouble to make it accessible. And then perhaps I don't know, a text or a table are easier in this case, or a column chart, whatever. There are solutions, but be open to other solution instead of having these pie charts. And now, again, a quiz. Which is, in your opinion, the most accessible font? And again, you can put it in your in the chat. Yes, it was mentioned earlier, the color blindness, and there are so many. But I prepared my presentation a few days ago. Yeah, I know the Open Dyslexic font, but we had a lot of exchanges about this font, and in fact, okay, I see Times New Roman and sans serif fonts, Verdana, Comic Sans, no, please, Comic Sans, it is for comics. Okay, I will show you the answer. And again, there is not a unique answer. It depends a little bit if you work for online publication, for digital media, or paper. In fact, in paper, we are so used to have fonts with serifs that even for dyslexic people, they could not be difficult to read. It's really a matter of habit in case of paper publication. But for all what it is digital media, please prefer sans serif fonts, because this small decoration could be really increase reading errors. What it is really important is to have a large enough text size, because sometimes we really have a small text. So even if it is sans serif, we cannot read it. And as I said, I wear glasses because I don't see small things. If your text on an internet site or on a PDF is too small, I have always to increase it. So it's also to avoid this extra manipulation. But another thing who makes really accessible your text is not having these endless lines. Don't go on an A4 page or an internet size from one end to the other. Usually we say that the perfect reading is between 45 and 75 characters. We also say, okay, 80, 85, but not more than 85, because dyslexic people, again, and also visually impaired people can be lost in the length of the line. And now we have another quiz, text alignment. So please choose the most accessible options in next slide. So we have here four kinds of alignments. We have number 1, which is left aligned text. Number 2 is a justified text without hyphenation. Number 3 is a centered text. And number 4 is a right aligned text. I will not answer yet which one is the right one to see. Exactly. Angela is right. Angela is right, and Isabella too. In fact, for us, the answer is left-aligned text. And why? Because the left-aligned text maintains a consistent space between characters and words. And this is much more easy to read for a dyslexic person, for example. And also, as all the lines start at the same level, for visually impaired people, they can easily find the beginning of a line. So the right answer is number 1. And now I will read a little bit. You have the text on the screen. When you work with tables, use them not to lay out a text that you have. And this is because assistive technology will read the table structure. So if you use it for layout, there is no structure behind. Said this, remember also to keep the table structure as simple as possible. because two complicated tables with many merged cells or empty cells may confuse the audience. And think again, if we speak about children, it has really to be simple. They will be interested in it for a few minutes, not more than a few minutes. Always identify the header row, because assistive technology will recognize it as a title for a column or a row. This is also really technical. We have to do it. We have to work a lot in the PDF, but when you work with Word or InDesign, you can already define the header row. And if you really have two complex tables that can be split in more tables, write an alt text so that the reader can decide if read or not the table, because the screen reader will read each cell and each corresponding title. So everything is repeated and repeated. And if I'm not interested in a table and I have the information what it is about, I can maybe skip this table. And after the tables, let me spend also 2 words about lists. Lists are announced by assistive technology. So it is all, but only if they are formatted as list in the applications you use for editing. So Word, PowerPoint, or InDesign. So really use the list functions of these applications. And then what it is also mandatory in accessible PDF publication, it is to have metadata. Metadata that are mandatory are the title of the publication, the author of the publication, and also the view option. We should see the document title. Nobody is interested in the name of the file that you have given to the file. And also, as we already said, the right language. Why I'm telling this, it is important because it's mandatory, and also because if you publish a document without any metadata, it cannot be searched. And a visually impaired person may be interested in it, but he cannot find it. So it is always better to think about it. And again, we work for our audience, we don't work for our clients. So we have always to keep it in mind when we do this kind of publications. So when I worked on the European Union Plan for Children's Rights, it was requested not only to have an accessible publication, but also child-friendly and easy to read. And easy to read is another word. Easy to read is a way to make information easy for everybody to read and to understand this publication. And when you use it mainly when you work for children, for people with intellectual disabilities or dementia, for people that don't have this language as a first language, for people with a strong dyslexia or really reading difficulties, and for people with auditory impairments that are just starting to learn spoken language. So as Marta already said, this job was done in collaboration with the audience, so with children. It was interesting, it was really great, and I will thank Marta again and again about this because it was really a great experience. And I will tell it to you again. In this kind of job, we work for the audience and not the client, and the client and the audience are not the same, not usually the same. And on this slide, I have the manuscript that I have received and how it was laid out. In this manuscript, there is something missing. These were examples of the illustrations that the children provided to me. Children were, they selected some illustrations and we created new ones together. So on top of all the rules that I have just described, for easy to read publications, we have other specific rules. And the rules are that the layout should be really simple and linear, as you can see there. It is recommended to use a sans serif font, as we have already said, Arial or Calibri. This is EC Square Sun. It is the font that the European Commission decided to use for all the communication. And it is also recommended to have at least 12 points of size, and we used 14 because we had enough space to use 14. And as the leading should be at least 1.5, we have 14 on 21. When you create a publication for children or an easy to read publication, you shouldn't abuse bolds or italics, because this is each time like a stop in the reading for the audience. So it is better to not abuse them. You should always write short sentences and lay out them in narrow columns. And this was the case because we were really helped by children for the manuscript. And the images should be used to improve the understanding of the text. We should avoid images that are just decoration. And we should have maximum from, let's say, 5 to 6 images per page. Too much will be too crowded for this kind of audience. And the images should always be aligned to the text they refer. The text should be left aligned, non-justified, as we have already said, and we shouldn't also use synonyms and non-technical terms. They will be too difficult to be understood. And okay, again, high contrast, because this is an accessibility rule. So this is in a few words all what we did and all what we had to think about when we prepared these publications. And this was my presentation. If you wish to find out more about it, we have in the publications office and website. I will read you the whole https://op.europa.eu/en/web/accessibility, because this is like a visually impaired person will listen it from his screen reader. So really think about it when you go for such a link. And now we are here for answering to answer your questions. So questions that we can answer, please.
Thank you very much to both Marta and Beatrice. At least now we know what we don't know when we are, or some of the things we don't know when we are writing some of our content. And it's great to see how you collaborated and how you brought different specialists in this team to make the end result. I see that Dragoș has a question, please.
Thank you so much for so many practical tips. I was wondering what the latest best practice is regarding content that appears on a website, but is quite likely to also be printed by visitors, especially in relation to the links slide that you said about, links being meaningful and not containing the long link. What happens when that text is printed? Are the links converted to QR codes by some new fancy tools, or should we think about that as well?
From what I know, no. You should think about it too. Think that all what I said now about links, these are all editorial interventions or manual interventions on the PDF. So it is really there are all things that you should think about it, but the QR code could be eventually a good solution if it has an alt text. Okay. Because a visually impaired person maybe can see the QR code, but if they don't know where they are going. And there was a question about emojis. But yeah, they are written in a different way. It depends on the device. The usual one, okay, the smile, they are read all in the same way. But there are some more complicated that come out with Apple new updates, or with WhatsApp new updates that are read in a funny way sometimes.
I also have a question, if I may. I know that there are specialist tools to do this, but I was wondering which ones you are using to check the degree to which a website or a publication is accessible. So, for example, do you use a specific tool to give you a score of how accessible a certain document is or certain web pages? Thank you.
I cannot tell you about web pages. We have a specialist. We have a team in the publications office, and the person who is checking web pages, they do usually the same checking if the same check that I do for publications, if the text is well tagged, if there is alt text, if there is enough contrast for the colors, and also if there are metadata tools. For example, as I'm working more in the publication domain, I'm using the Acrobat checker for accessibility, and another tool that it is also available for free, and it is the PAC checker, PAC 2021, if I'm not wrong. We call it PAC 3, but this is the previous version. We use this really a lot. And there is also a tool that it is that you can check. Just check, you cannot change anything. You can check if your PDF it is accessible on the web, and it is PDF Go HTML from a firm called Kallax. Vincent Garrett is answering how he is checking, because he is a member of my team. We are member of the same team, so. So again, I think the most used is the PAC 3, PAC 2021 for PDF publications. Each time that we do a check, there are always errors and errors. So we hate it, but it is the best one.
Thank you. Thank you. And I see there are some more questions and comments in the chat if you'd like to.
For alt text, is it okay to use Frey as we see a picture of? You have to think that when a screen reader reads a text, here it's already announced that it is an image. So we should avoid to say picture or image, and we should maybe avoid to seeing, sorry if I'm telling this, because perhaps you have in front of the screen a blind person. So you just say what it is, the image, because the screen reader will say image, and you can say image of Ursula von der Leyen wearing a pink skirt, I don't know, things like that. I would avoid it. There is also a debate of saying if using the mention of colors or not. The biggest part of the people says yes, we should use the mention of a color, because the visually impaired person is probably not completely blind, so they have a sense of a color, or they can remember the color. So colors are okay, but seeing a picture is like repeating the same thing. The screen reader will tell it too. Is left-aligned text rule somewhat related to the, sorry, I don't know what F-shaped reading pattern. I suppose it comes from the left alignment, the F-shaped reading pattern. I'm an old graphic designer, so I have learned to balance a little bit the columns so that we don't have this effect. But it is also true that when you do accessibility, you shouldn't use hyphened words. So it's not always possible to avoid this wave effect in the text. It's easier to be read because you know where a text starts. So in terms of alt, there is a rule to avoid using, can we see? Yeah, we just said it. Then I don't know if I'm losing
I think that was it in terms of questions or comments on the chat. I'm aware that we are a little bit over time because this was thank you for the interactions and also for your answering so patiently and kindly all of these. So Marta and Beatrice, thank you again.